6 o'clock, so we shall start. Welcome to February's Planning Committee. First thing I will do is just read this out. The meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. The recording of the meeting will remain online for 4 years, and if you are present in the chamber, you are consenting to appear on the recordings and broadcast, which may also be used for training purposes. Okay. Before we run down the agenda, just for the few people in the public gallery, when we get to an application, what will happen is the officer will present the report. If I've got public speakers, and I do, after that I will call them forwards. Each speaker has up to 5 minutes, and then they can sit back down. Then I'll open it up to the committee to ask questions initially of the officers, and then we'll go into debate and hopefully come to a determination. The only other thing I wanted to say before we started the meeting is 36 Denmark Road, that's right, isn't it? Yeah, has been withdrawn, and therefore we don't need to discuss that because the application now no longer exists. So if anybody's here for 36 Denmark Road only, then we won't be talking about it because it's been withdrawn. Okay, so before we begin, if I introduce ourselves. So my name's Gordon Taylor and I chair.
Michael Ronan, local planning lawyer.
Oliver Brown, Democratic and Electoral Services Officer.
Steve Morgan, Councillor for Grange Ward and also Vice Chair of this committee.
David Brown, Councillor for Hucklecote.
Joanne Brown, Councillor for Barnwood.
Lorraine Campbell, Councillor for Tuffley.
Angela Conda, Councillor for Kingsholm and Wootton.
Alistair Chambers, Councillor for Matson, Robinswood and White City.
Finished. Andrew Gravells, Councillor for Abbeydale.
Paula D, Councillor for Tuffley.
Mark Sweet, Gloucestershire Highways.
Yes, Ian Hunt, Gloucestershire Highways.
John Bishop, Planning Manager.
Harriet Parker, Planning Officer.
Okay, so first of all, we'll take apologies, which we've got two.
Yeah, so we've had apologies from Councillor Tolman and Councillor Sawyer.
Does anybody have any declarations of interest in any of the items on the agenda tonight? No? Okay. Are you happy for me to sign the minutes of the last meeting off as a true record for those of us that were here? Oh, Councillor Gravells.
So I'm happy to agree the minutes. I think they're a true record. But I've just got one item under, we don't have matters arising, do we? But if you read the minutes, you'll read that I agreed to go back to the hospital, or I offered to go back to the hospital and find why they didn't put any comments about the application for the Great Western Yard 315 properties development, if you remember. And I expressed concerns about the potential deterioration of ambulance response times if there was serious congestion down Great Western Road. Well, I did contact the hospital and they said, well, first of all, we did get the letter from the planning department, and it was sent out, as Adam, if he was here, might remember, around about August time, when in any case the postal service in Gloucester was slightly shot and letters were taking 1 week at least to get from one part of Abbeydale to another. But the reason I raise it, Chair, and thanks for listening to me, is that when we wrote to the Gloucestershire Royal Hospitals Trust saying we invite you to make comments, the letter was addressed to the owner/occupier, Gloucestershire Royal Hospital. And so when that landed in the post room, they said, oh, this must be so-and-so. Oh, no, it's not them, it's not us. And by the time it got to the right people in the estates department, the 21 days were up. So hence the hospital didn't reply. And from conversations I've had, they had some pretty robust views on this application that they would have liked to have made, pretty much in line with the comments that I was making about the need for easy access for the ambulances accessing the emergency department, the A&E department. So, two things from that. When we write in future to companies or public institutions, can we do better than writing to the owner stroke occupier? I'm sure we can get a name. I will email the team tomorrow and give them the names of the right people. And also, it would be useful maybe if now we found the right person, if a meeting could be held between the planners and them to look at the issues of concern. I appreciate we can't overturn planning decisions. I appreciate we can't look at the planning application again. But I would hope that we would afford the hospital trust a degree of flexibility in being able to at least have a discussion. And so I was disappointed to find out that a letter was sent to the owner, I couldn't believe it, owner stroke occupier, Gloucester Royal Hospital. We can do better than that, Chair, and we must do better.
Thank you, Councillor Gravels. Turn your mic off, please. No, does anybody want... you're going to email the officers with the names. Okay. I'll sign these off now. Okay. Has everybody read the late material that we got yesterday? Yes. Okay, so happy to note? Okay, so we'll move on to our first application, which is 26 Heathfield Road.
Good evening, everyone. This is the application for 26 Heathfield Road, which is for proposed internal alterations and change of use from C3 to sui generis use. So the application, the Heathfield Road, is within the Kingsholm and Wootton ward. It's the change of use from 7-bedroom C3 private dwelling to a 9-bed large HMO under sui generis use class. The application has been brought forward before committee tonight as it was called up by one of the ward councillors. In the whole application, it received 14 letters of objection, 1 objection from a ward councillor and 2 letters of support. Apologies. So this is the site location plan for the application. So as you can see in the red line boundary, that is the property 26. So just to give you some context, to the south is the junction with London Road, and to the north it goes on to Delmont Road. It is located within the Delmont Road Conservation Area and is identified as a non-designated heritage asset, but is not a listed building, nor is it identified within the Gloucester local list, which was produced in 2022. These are some existing site photos of the site. So it is a semi-detached property of which number 26 makes up the left side of the pair of dwellings. The existing dwelling has off-street parking to the front behind a low brick wall, a bay window and timber garage doors that you can see in the photo. These are some photos to show you the surrounding areas. So to the south of the proposed dwelling is the Firs, which is the first photo on the left, which is some residential flats. To the north, number 28 Heathfield Road, which is the second picture. Across the road, which are the other 2 photographs, are number 27 to 29, 31 and 33 Heathfield Road, which are currently run as care facilities. These are the existing elevations of the site, so you can see the bay window, timber garage doors, which was granted consent from a living room in 1961, the chimney stacks and the dormer windows in the roof space, which were granted consent in 1965. This is the existing floor plan, which shows the existing 7 bedrooms and the bedrooms within the roof space. This is the proposed elevations. So external elevations proposed in the front elevation are to remove the existing timber garage doors and its slight projection, to be replaced with 2 windows flush to the existing front elevation, and they are designed to match the attached number 24 Heathfield. The council's conservation officer has raised no objection to the proposal, subject to the conditions of which the proposed materials of the windows and its profile are conditioned in condition 3 and 4 of the committee report and require written approval from the LPA. This is the proposed floor plan. So it's conversion, like I said, from a 7-bed to 9-bed dwelling, which would host a maximum of 12 residents. As you can see in the highlighted sections, these are the proposed internal amendments. The Housing Project and Strategy team have raised no objection to the proposed, and all rooms meet NDSS standard. And like I said, it will accommodate up to 12 residents. So just to give you some context into policy A2, which is the HMO policy of the Gloucester City Plan. So as you can see, the red dot indicates the application site. Within the 100-metre radius, which is the red circle, there are 48 properties located. There are 4 large HMO properties, which are demonstrated by the green dots. There are, I appreciate, 3, but one of them is 27 to 29, but I've counted that as 2 properties because it is a semi-detached. This calculates to 10.4% of dwellings within the 100-metre radius. I've based my opinions and summary in the committee report, of which 10.4% is acceptable, as the 0.4% above 10 is a marginal increment and is considered not to be a detrimental harm in terms of the 4%, and that is based on a recent inspector's opinion on 82 Henry Road, which came to committee previously. As I said, across the road for the 3 green dots are the large HMO properties. They are currently run as residential care facilities, but as they are not regulated by the CQC, they are registered as large HMOs. There was some questioning from councillors after the committee report was published about 39 Heathfield Road, which is a HMO, but that is a 6-bed HMO and is not categorised as a large HMO, and so it's not taken in consideration of the 10% calculation. This is the proposed block plan of the site. So there is proposed cycle storage in the rear and proposed bin storage. These are conditioned in condition 7 and 6 of the committee report. There's also proposed new 1.8 metre fence and gate to the rear garden. Highways have no objection to the proposal due to restrictions along the highway and constraints in place along Heathfield Road with the traffic regulation order. And the large rear garden is to remain as existing. There was comments from the housing strategy team to potentially divide the garden to provide individual space for each room, but it was decided that this would be at a detriment to the existing garden and the properties itself. There is an expectation for residents within a HMO as one dwelling to be able to share outdoor space, to which we find the large garden sufficient for the number. So to conclude, the officer's recommendation is to grant the planning permission subject to conditions.
Thank you. Have we got a speaker, Keith Noble? So you've got up to 5 minutes. When you're ready, if you tap the button, the mic should go red. Do you want me to give you a 1-minute warning, or are you okay?
Okay, I just want to really, the information that we've been given, I'm glad you actually mentioned the one that is a student accommodation at the moment, but it's below the number. What I wanted to mention was, although there's other things that are lower than the large HMO, I think, which is what you're talking about. Within this 100 metres of this building, there's a care home for people with learning disabilities. That's 14. Number 35 across the road is another accommodation for supported accommodation. It may fall below the large number. 37 is split into 5 flats. 39 is student accommodation. That's the one that you just mentioned, which is only 6 bed, but it is student accommodation. 24 Heathfield Road is currently having work done on it, and I don't know, that is by the owner of 27 to 33. So what that's going to be, I don't know. 15 Heathfield Road, in my opinion, is in the 100 metres, and actually looking at your diagram, it would suggest it is as well. That's another supported accommodation. 25, 27 Honiot Road are in that area, that 100 metres. They are supported accommodation. Outside the 100 metres, but within 200 metres, we have 7 and 9 to 9 Heathfield Road, which is a huge supported living accommodation. We have 5 Heathfield Road, which is a large student accommodation as well, which is again within 200 metres. There are various smaller student accommodation on Honiot Road and Henry Road. On Henry Road yesterday, there were 13 flat houses up for rent for let. They are all student accommodation. Now, I have no problem with the students. I love the fact that Gloucester is becoming a student city. I think it's a great way forward. However, you know, it's all in one area. There are larger supported accommodation and care facilities for people with various support needs on Denmark Road and Alexandra Road. There are 5 alone on Alexandra Road. There's a nursery business. We've had to put up for as long as I've lived there, which is 16 years, with the Fortis building at the end of the road, which is a complete and utter eyesore. Now, I know you've been trying to do something about that, the council's been trying to do something about it, but it is still a fact that this is what we have to live with. Of the 33 buildings, not taking into account the Firs, which is a purpose-built flat, of the 33 buildings in Heathville Road between Denmark Road and London Road, 13 are family homes. That's what I think we're also, you know, this, I'm just really, I suppose, what people are saying in the area is we have no objection. We get on great with our neighbours, all the people with support needs generally. Most of them are pretty good. Some of the students leave quite a mess at times, and we'll say that. But generally, you get on quite well. But there comes a point when that's our road. That's the road I live in. 13 of 33 buildings is now is family homes. If you want Gloucester to somehow compete with Stroud and Cheltenham as a place for people to live, you need some higher end accommodation. Around Heathfield Road, Denmark Road, Alexandra Road is where you'll get it. That's all I really have to say. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just... so open to questions for the officer. Councillor Brown, Joanne Brown, and then...
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at this saturation figure of 10.4% for HMOs. In the late material, there was an application that was declined and went to appeal and was granted. Is that accommodation, is that property included in this 10.4%?
So no, yeah, the Henry Road application, which the inspectors note doesn't fall within the 100 metres. No, it doesn't fall within the 100 metre radius, so it's not within the calculation.
No, it was just, the same policy was applied to that, which is why we've got the information in front of us. Councillor Condor.
Thank you. Can I clarify how many double bedrooms and how many single, first of all, please? I think on the table it suggests 4 double and 6 single, but in the text it's 3 double and 4 and 5, and in the text it's 3 and 6. I'm assuming it's 3 and 6.
Okay,
3
sorry.
double and 6.
If I make it easier, do you want me to read them out individually for each room? With that? Okay. So room 1 would be a single, room 2 a double, room 3 a single, room 4 a single, room 5 a double, room 6 a single, room 7 a single, room 8 a double, and room 9 a single.
So how many doubles was that?
So sorry, it's 2 doubles. 1 double did not meet the NDSS, so it is proposed as a double by the applicant, but it would be required to be a single. Sorry, apologies. So 2 rooms would be doubles.
Okay, thank you. And the second question, how will the back garden be cared for? It's an extensive space.
So the back garden would be expected to be cared for by the residents of the house, no different to a private dwelling.
Will they be provided with a tool store and a lawnmower?
That's not consideration for this application. It's a private rental agreement, so it would be in regards to the landlord and the tenants. They'd be expected to maintain the garden to the same level as any other resident along the street.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Actually, my question's about the percentage as well. This one being 10.4%. I know we've got to have a cut-off somewhere, and the regulations are 10%, but you mentioned about the previous application that was just a shade over 10%. Can you remind us what percentage that was?
Yeah, so for the Henry Road application that came before committee before, the inspector found that a 10.2% was acceptable.
Hi, sorry. So it's the 10.2, isn't it, not 10.4? Is that correct? Because on late material it says 10.2, and during the discussions, the figure of 10.4's been discussed.
Apologies. So this application would measure 10.4 within the 100-metre radius. The 10.2 is of the previous application that had an inspector's decision of which I based my 10.4 assessment upon. It was clarified in late materials. Apologies if that was not clear.
With regards to Conservation Officer, they initially raised an objection. Is that correct, with the JCS in section 16?
Yes, so previously the conservation area objected on the design of the window. The applicant went away and made amendments to which the conservation area found that the latest amendments were acceptable subject to condition.
Yeah, I've seen no objection on the 9th of the 1st this year, and that's for a matching stone sill, matching brickwork to match the existing street scene. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
No problem. Also, the Housing Strategy Officer was an objection based on different policies, A1 being the bike shed, which I've since seen they've included a bike shed for 9 bikes, and also policy 2 for a kitchen on the 2nd floor, which they've included now. Would there be anything in the planning legislation, because that's internal, it's not planning as in external, to ensure that that kitchen does go in? Would that be a condition listed, bolted on to this if it's a successful application?
So the proposed floor plan, which does state the kitchen, is conditioned in condition 2. So they would be required to abide by the condition. However, as it's not a listed building, they can do internal amendments without consent. So that may be that later on they decide to amend that layout, but that would be out of our control if it was granted consent. Yeah, so for planning, it's not required to have a kitchen. However, HMO licensing would require a kitchen, so that would be something that they would look into.
I note the Civic Trust has no objections. Is that correct?
Yes, Civic Trust had no objection.
And Highways, no objections because of the TRO on the road.
Yeah, so no objections from Highways as well.
And the Gloucester local plan states that obviously we need additional housing in Gloucester, so it's in line with the local plan. Is that correct?
Yes, so the point of the A2 policy is to control conversions from residential properties, hence the concentration percentage. So it does abide by policy A2, so it's considered in abiding by all policies in the most recent city plan.
Sorry, that last question. With regards to, I don't know if I can speak on this, apologies if I can't, shut me down if it's a legal thing that I'm not allowed to speak on. But with regards to the member of the public that spoke out about within the vicinity, the majority of the HMOs are for complex care needs. Does that run the risk, if there's no condition on here for it to be another complex care, that this is going to be a complex care street, which obviously does come with additional sort of concerns? For example, the property in Kingsway that was passed successfully this year was for complex care apartments, around 25 residents. You do run the risk, I believe, in my opinion, that if this isn't thought out and managed correctly, and there's no condition on there for it be, again, another complex care, that it could be detrimental to the people with complex needs and also the residents in the area. Will there be a condition on that, or is that not possible?
Yeah, so the existing permission is for house of multiple occupancy, so it's not for a care home. The care homes across the road, which are HMO licensed, are because they're not regulated by the CQC or a local authority. That's why they're a HMO. Majority of care homes are regulated by CQC, so they can, as long as they've got planning consent for a care facility, they would be able to be along the street and they wouldn't affect the calculation. This HMO it's not indicated that it's the case, it's just the principle of a HMO that's been assessed.
So, sorry, just to add on to that last question. So if this gets granted permission as a HMO, if they go to the CQC Care Quality Commission, can they just automatically override that to be a care complex, or would they have to go back to planning to get that additional permission?
They would need to come back to planning. So currently they're applying to be a sui generis use class. A care facility is under C2, so they would need to come back for planning commission to convert to care facility.
And the drawing here shows the orange markings. That's just internal, indicative, very minor amendments to the design by the looks of it. And apart from the garage door, am I correct in thinking that's the only alterations to the facade within the conservation area?
Yeah, so the only alterations are to remove the garage and implement the window. There is one slight amendment to the rear extension, which is existing, which is just to move a window slightly by less than a metre, but that's not in the facade of the conservation area, no.
I'm sorry to ask more questions. Just last one, I think it's very important. I see the requirement for a bin store. Sorry. I see the requirement for a bin store in the garden, which is part of the alterations to make it a HMO compliant for the 12 residents. What happens if that bin store's not used and the bins end up being at the front, being an eyesore for all the residents in the future? How can that be monitored? Because I appreciate it's a planning requirement now to have the bin store, but who polices that going forward? Is there a way of policing, or is that impossible?
So in terms, they are required to provide the bin store. Obviously, I can't indicate as to whether the residents will use it correctly. If it became the case that it wasn't, unfortunately, that's not a planning consideration. I would advise that they contact the environmental health team at the council to contact the residents in regards to the waste.
Thank you. That's me finished.
Councillor Tracy, have you got some questions? Can you turn your mic on, please?
But a lot of it's been, answered. I was going about the bin storage. No way would we want bin storage in the front of these houses. Also the parking situation for two cars. But I mean, there's quite a lot of rooms there, isn't there? So probably people have cars. This bike business, they don't use the bikes. And after a certain time, it's free. Anyone can park wherever they want at night. So the residents who've been there for years and years and years lose their spaces at night because the other people park in those spaces. So what staffing and people going in and out there, how many car park spaces are there at the back? Did we talk about this having in the front as well?
There's no car parking spaces at the rear of the property.
That's what I think we
There
talked,
is
yeah.
off-street tarmac area to the front, which from measurements we would say that a maximum of 2 cars could realistically park on it, which is existing. They would be required to abide by the TRO on the street, which would allow a maximum of 2 permits, which is likely in most cases that the landlord restricts and they control. But as the house is already a 7-bed, they already exceed the limit that they would be allowed to abide by. So the increment of 2 bedrooms and possibly up to 12 residents, they would still be required to abide by the TRO on site.
And how long would a turnover be of people being in there? If I go in there for a week, I wouldn't want to buy a parking ticket, would I?
So it's a HMO, so
Yeah, I get that.
there is no indication in the application as to the rental agreements or it'd be short term, so I can't answer that question, unfortunately.
Okay, dear. But I want to go on more about it all, but as they're not questions, so I'll go into a debate, okay?
Councillor Gravels?
So I thought that, I don't wish to be patronising, but I thought that the objectors spoke well, made a good case. And I just would be interested to hear from the planning officers their views on the points that he was making. I got the feeling that he was saying, and it's always awful to say what you think somebody was saying, that there were no objections with the different kinds of uses, but there were just too many properties in Heathfield Road, in this road, which were being lost to family housing.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a valid and a strong point. I'd be interested to hear your take on that and whether you agree with that or you refute it.
Spoke on this last night.
So the point of the policy of A2 is to measure the concentration of HMOs in this case and the possible loss of residential properties. I appreciate that the applicant has brought forward multiple addresses. Obviously, I can't check those at this time. If they are care facilities, they can be CQC regulated or local authority. They wouldn't be required to be HMO licensed, so they wouldn't be calculated in policy A2 for this application, nor would small HMOs. So I appreciate that there are additional addresses that they feel I have not calculated within the application, but I have followed guidance for policy A2.
Okay, so I was listening very, very carefully to that. And were you in effect saying, I'm not quite sure what the answer is. There might be other properties that have been used to calculate this figure of 10.1 or 2%, but I'm not totally sure. Or are you totally sure that all of the properties that have been converted you're aware of and are counting?
I have undertaken this assessment with my planning team, an assessment with my manager, the private sector housing team and the housing projects and strategy team. As far as we're aware, and all the information that we have available to us, this is the accurate calculation.
Just finally, I don't mean to, I think this is an important point to pursue, and I want to pursue it. You don't see any discrepancy between the percentage you've calculated and the percentage that our friend over here was talking about? You're totally sure? You're totally sure nothing has been missed?
Yeah. I'm happy with my calculation and my assessment within the report. There may be other properties which are care home, which I said are not required to be HMO licensed and all run by local authorities. I've abided by all guidance given to myself and the policy assessments. I'm happy with the calculation.
Thanks. I think the A2 policy is around other HMOs, large HMOs, and not other non-residential conversions, which and I know when we were looking at the policy way back before that we pushed hard to get a policy like this in place, and I think you might have been in the cabinet at the time the plan was going through. But the policy is as it is. We have to follow it. Does anybody else want to come in? Debate? Yeah. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Griffiths is quite right. The speaker who addressed us put some very interesting facts before us. I think the difficult, and one can obviously have sympathy with the residents who are feeling that this is a sort of a takeover of their road. The difficulty we have is that the proposal in front of us meets the planning requirements, and we have to decide based upon the information that we have on the report. I looked closely at this. I had to drive along there to have a closer look. The numbers aren't good, but I can actually personally see no reason to actually refuse this application based upon what we have in front of us today. Whilst one has sympathy with the residents, our requirement is that we follow the planning guidelines. And I think that's which has been very adequately outlined to us in this report. Thank you.
Tracy.
In scrutiny last night, I spoke on this in length. And you go up Oxford Road, it's every other house. You go along Denmark Road, it's every other house. Heathfield Road, Honiot Road, and the top of Henry Road. It's absolutely diabolical. And the fact is, I feel sorry for the residents because once they go in, it's a job to sell their houses. And we're just, they're being invaded with all these people coming in who don't use the city facilities or anything like that. We have a school. The parking there is horrendous every day. And, I don't know where we draw a line on this. I mean, like you said, there's got to be about 20, 30, 40 houses, all these orange, whatever signs. And there are people, which I spoke on last night, landlords here, they do it on the internet and put these houses up for sale and you don't even know who the landlord is. But I know I'm getting away from from what's been put in front of us. But you know what? I do feel sorry for the residents. And I feel sorry for the people who go in there because they're promised that, and it never happens. And highways is a big issue there, especially coming up Alexander Road. on that dear little roundabout where this will go. So, you know, I'm not happy with it and I will vote against.
Can you turn your mic off? Anybody else want to debate? Councillor Condor and then Councillor Chambers.
Thank you very much. We've talked a bit about statistics, but we haven't talked about housing needs. And we've seen in the report that there are several families waiting for 4-bedroom homes who might wait 10 years. This building, I welcome the prospect of renovation and the loss of the garage doors at the front. It will look a lot more attractive because it's a conservation area, and conservation means keeping things as they are, but this is an opportunity to improve the appearance of the building. But will it improve the environment for the people who live in that house or for their neighbours? It could be converted into 2 apartments, a ground floor apartment and an upper level. I live in a house that was in that format until I moved in with my family and turned it back into a whole family home. We haven't really talked about the needs of families in this conversation. If it becomes occupied by singletons, and I don't think it will be students because students don't usually live as couples, and we've got a couple of double rooms proposed here, it's likely to be people who don't intend to stay very long. I've marked out on the floor with red wool a 12-metre square, which is larger than the proposed sitting room. It's a small double or a large single. You can look at it and work out where you'd put your double bed, your wardrobe, your desk, your dressing table, 2 armchairs, maybe where you'd put a kettle, possibly a toaster or a microwave. If that was a hotel room, we would not find it acceptable. It would not provide a home. It would be somewhere that people would look to leave as soon as possible. This is a family street, as our spokesperson has said, and the residents nearby would like to preserve the atmosphere, which makes it more pleasant for those other residents, the ones who are learning disabled, physically disabled. Some of them are recovering alcoholics. We have a children's home just round the corner in Alexandra Road. We want those people to have the experience of living in a family environment where children can go to school, children can play in the back garden. What's proposed at the moment doesn't offer that. It's a poor offer for the putative residents. It's a poor offer for the existing residents. And it says very little about what we as a city can do for our householders and families. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the space there of the 12 metres squared, it's actually 3 times that of communal space. You've also got the kitchen and the dining area on top of that. You've also got a large hallway as well, so don't use that as a distraction to the true area. It's actually 3 times the size of that. Bear in mind as well, there's an absolutely huge hall. It's again probably around that size, much bigger than most modern houses. So I think there's adequate communal space on that. With regards to housing need, yes, there's a huge housing need in Gloucester. 5,000 people are currently waiting for housing. However, this being a 7-bedroom, as the member just said, wouldn't go to a 4-bed to be rented out. The majority of housing need in Gloucester is social housing. Social housing providers won't take this on. The uplift of the empty bedrooms, if it's a family of 4, you only need 3 bedrooms, couple, 2, 3 children, whatever, then probably even share if this the same sex up to a certain age. So you possibly got 4, maybe 3 bedrooms empty. It doesn't make sense. Housing association would not facilitate the rent on that. A 7-bedroom house, you're probably looking at about a couple of grand now in today's market, plus maybe 2.5 grand rent a month. The uplift they'd have to pay on the social housing would be unreasonable to rent out for social housing. So that argument I go against. I agree with the fellow member that spoke earlier that this isn't probably a decision that would go down well with residents, and you've got that NIMBYism not on my back door, and I agree with that. And if I lived on the street, possibly I'd have the same thing, which I have done, hence the reason I didn't step into the meeting previously, because I lived on a street where the similar thing was happening to me, and I stepped out because I refused. So I could not step into the planning meeting because I was against it, as members here. However, that got passed, and it got passed for various reasons, which I couldn't object to. One of the reasons similar to this was Conservation Officer was happy, Civic Trust were happy, Housing Projects and Strategy Officer was happy, Highways were happy, and so you've got to go with the consultants. The consultants in this case are all happy. Not only that, the front of the house, in my opinion, looks better, and so does the Conservation Officer agree, with a natural stone, matching brick and cast iron guttering. It's actually on the landscape street scene, it's going to look good. Landscape to the gardens are not changing. It's a low flood risk, and it's going to help fulfil 12 people off the 5,000 waiting list that we have in the city of Gloucester. So I'm probably, well, based on the position at the moment, I'm going to vote for, because I'm going to go with the professionals that have all said that it should be passed, and I believe it's going to facilitate 12 people that are, you can call them singletons, but they're still people trying to build their life, maybe just finish university, staying in our city, trying to build a career, that can't afford a single premises flat, which at the moment I checked on Flat Rent and also Rightmove, two of the main facility for rentals online, which you're looking at a single flat in that location of £950 a month, which isn't feasible for anyone that's just finished their university course. They're looking to build a career, looking to save up, possibly meet a partner and find a home. I think this is great. It's great for our city. It's just within the index, or just over by 0.2. So yeah, I'm going to go with this. I think it's what our city needs, and we need some good starter blocks for people to get on the housing ladder. And if it becomes an issue with the property, it's very easy for the residents to do a community protection notice. It only needs 2 households to do that, and then the property would be under strict control with the community and wellbeing team of the council. So I've got no reason for objection, and we can't let opinions that the wrong people might be in there to stop what is a valid planning application. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gravels, and I feel like we need to move on. That's okay.
So I wish I had the sureness that other speakers have spoken about. I'm unable to reconcile the views that member of the public, I apologise for not remembering your name, put forward, and the numbers that he quoted. And I've got no hesitation in saying that I respect totally, obviously, professionalism of the planning team. I don't think there's any reason why I shouldn't doubt that. But I remain unconvinced that the figures that you outlined reconcile with what we've heard. I know I'm not going to get any support for this, but I personally would be much happier if we could defer this one until we've looked in more detail at the number of properties that are in this road, which we perhaps might have missed. I'm not saying that we have missed them, but there's enough doubt in my mind that there's a possibility they might have been missed. And all of us sat around this table, come to meetings, we vote all the time, for, against, for, against, for, against. I can't remember the last time I abstained in any vote, but I am going to abstain on this one because I remain unconvinced. And I can't reconcile what we've heard from obviously a very passionate and well-informed member of the public. And I keep apologising for calling you a member of the public, so rude of me, with what we've heard from the officers. And Gordon's absolutely right. This was a policy that I steered through Cabinet, and so it doesn't give me any great pleasure to think perhaps I didn't get that policy right, and maybe I should have fine-tuned it a bit. But that's why I will be not voting, and I will be abstaining. I can't remember the last time I abstained in a vote, but remember I did it today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Just going back to the policy, I think the difference of the confusion is around in the policy, we're only looking at other large HMOs. We're not looking at other non-residential uses, which that street probably does have 2/3 non-residential use. And it's a shame that we're losing another residential unit. I get that. But the policy is very specific about the type of, it's okay, about the type of properties that we're looking at to apply for the policy. So the policy comes in at 10.4. a smidgen above our baseline of 10%. If you're rounding it, you would ordinarily round that down anyway. And the appeal from the last one makes it harder for us to go, actually, it's not policy compliant, from what the inspector said in the previous report. And so, unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to agree with the recommendations in the report. Does anybody else want to come in before I put it to a vote? Councillor Griggs.
Yeah, I appreciate there is a long waiting list. I mean, there's 5,000 up for ages, so I mean, it's not going up or down. But for one person, I mean, you've got a lot of mothers out there with children to deal with it. That's not going to be a home for them. There's so many single rooms in there, and it's not environment, in an environment for that. But where I'm coming from, nice parts of the city centre, King's Own, you might as well just lock it down and put all HMOs there, because I can't see where else they have so many, and we have so many different problem houses as well there. But the fact is, I don't know, the conservation officer, well, to me, I don't know where they're coming from. But I can't see a point that's going to help the owners.
I'm going to move to the vote, if that's okay. Do I have a seconder? So I'm going to move that we accept the recommendations as laid out in the report. They weren't amended, were they, in the late material? Second. All those in favour? Recommend the approval. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7. All those against? 1, 2. Abstentions? 1. Okay, so that's been granted. Shall we move on to the next agenda item? Anybody want to leave, please feel free. I guess it's you again.
Yeah.
Excuse me, before we start the next one, is there existing plans I can only see proposed for Hillview on the plan? So they'll be in the presentation, but not on the plans, no? In the pack. Okay, no problem. All right, I'll have to have a look then. Just, can you wait on the existing for a bit longer then? Is that all right? Thanks.
So this application is for 2 Hillview Road for change of use from hair salon to takeaway kebab shop, hot food takeaway, apologies. So the application is located in the Hockcoat ward. It is a change of use from hair salon to hot food takeaway, and they have defined it will be for kebab. Opening hours are proposed to be Monday to Saturday, 5 till 11, and Sunday and bank holidays, 5 to 11, as amended in the late materials. A separate application was submitted for the proposed change to advertisement at the site, and this has been dealt separately to this application. And it has been brought forward before you by the Constitution procedure as it received 7 objections. This is the site location plan. As you can see, the red line boundary shows the site. In relation to the wider area, Hocklecote Road is to the south, and to the north is Foxwell Drive. It is located within the Hockcoat Local Centre as defined in the 2002 local plan. There is a residential flat on the first floor of this unit. However, this is not considered within the application as that's not proposed to change. These are some existing site photos of the unit, as you can see from the front. The third one along is from the corner and the junction with Hucklecote Road. And the last photo is to show the parade of shops, of which it's connected to another hairdresser's and the co-op. In the surrounding area across from the unit is other commercial uses such as the Pied Piper Appeal charity shop. There is an estate agent's, Betfred betting shop, Papa John's Pizza, and there are flats above these units, as you can see with the flags, and wider residential uses in the wider context. However, there are some commercial and community uses along Hucklecote Road to the south. This is the existing elevations of the hairdressers, as you can see, and I've included a photo to give you some context. So there is the existing decorative brick wall, wood cladding along the bottom with white UPCV windows above. And this is the existing floor plan of the shop. It's quite plain, as you can imagine. It's been vacant since 2021, but used to be a hairdresser's, so you can imagine what the floor plan may have indicated. This floor plan shows the existing access from Hillview Road, and as you can see, the stairs that go up to the residential flat above. This is the proposed elevations of the unit. So it is to remain largely the same. There is an introduction of a new UPVC fire door on the right-hand side of the unit. This has not been defined as to what colour, so that has been conditioned to be matching to existing. As I said previously, the sign, which you can see states Kebab Royale, is dealt with as a separate application. And there is no other proposed elevations changes to the front of the property that fronts Hucklecote Road. This is the proposed ventilation system for the hot food takeaway. Our council's external noise and odour consultants have raised no objections subject to conditions for the ventilation system. It would sit atop the flat roof of the unit and be partially hidden behind the existing parapet wall, which you can see is indicated of the dashed line. There will be some parts of the ventilation system which are visible, which are the vertical flue that will be attached to the side elevation of the upper flat. Again, the colour and materials of the proposed ventilation system have not been provided, so they have been conditioned, of which those conditions include the colour and proposed materials such as the RAL colour and the proposed number of carbon filters proposed for the ventilation system. This is the proposed floor plan. It's been divided, or it's proposed to be divided into a shop front area for customers and a prep area to the rear for staff. There is also proposed to be customer waste and recycling in the shop front, which is indicated by that rectangular area. There is also refuse and recycling proposed under the stairs for the prep area for staff. The proposed fire door that was shown in the previous elevation will provide access to the first floor flat and provide fire route for staff at the rear. The applicant has also provided information that they will train staff on the proper waste and recycling procedures for the unit to prevent any additional waste necessary. The local highway authority have raised no objection to the proposal. They are happy that the existing parking restrictions and bollards will prevent unsuitable parking and any potentially more deliveries will be restricted by current parking restrictions. However, the applicant has indicated they will undertake supplying of the shop themselves and will not be receiving deliveries to the unit. As you can see from the picture, bollards have recently been hit at the area. However, I assume that these will be replaced. It's not that they are being proposed to be removed. The officer's recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions amended in the late materials.
Thank you. I've got one speaker, Savji. So same as the last gentleman, you've got up to 5 minutes. Tap the button when you're ready. Do you want a 1 minute warning?
So, hello to everyone. So thank you for allowing us to speak today. We've been a part of this community for quite some time, operating a successful cafe that has become a staple on the area. We're excited to evolve that business. We want to express our appreciation to the case officer for their thorough report. Their diligence has not gone unnoticed, and we're grateful for their commitment to this process. As you know from the case officer's report, the professionals within the planning department have recommended approval after a meticulous assessment. We were also pleased to read within the report that there are no objections from the statutory consultees pending conditions. We understand the concerns raised by some of our neighbours, and we want to assure everyone that we've taken those concerns seriously. The council has been rigorous in addressing these issues, and we've worked hard to ensure that our application aligns with policies, within the policies, and while being considerate of the community's needs. So to our neighbours, we want to extend our invitation. If our application is approved, our doors will be open to them and their families, and we hope to foster positive relationships within the community. So we appreciate your time and consideration, and we're eager to contribute positively to our city. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Just trying to cancel the timer. Okay. Open to questions. First of all, Councillor Brown. Councillor Tracy, did you indicate too?
Right, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm delighted that the Highways Authority are here today, especially two, that's fabulous. But I was looking at their contribution of no objection, and it says, based on the analysis of the information submitted. I'm just wondering what information was submitted?
Hello. Yeah. Well, I based my assessment on the information that you've seen as well on the planning application, as well as doing my own assessment, looking at our own records for the road, for the TRO restrictions, the collision history, those kind of things.
Right. Thank you. I mean, you mentioned about the barriers have just been knocked down, so you probably weren't aware of that accident at the time. It was quite serious. The barriers have been knocked down. Can you say, because other barriers that have been knocked down in the area have not been replaced? My understanding is that that's the policy. Can you give a reassurance that these bollards, and there's 3 of them, will be replaced?
Yes, through you, Chair. I think it's essential that the bollards are replaced, so I'll make sure that's done. Where you have hot food takeaways, you do get short-term convenience parking. So there are double yellow lines there to put people off, but some people will take a chance. So even though there's plenty of parking in the vicinity, so obviously the extra bollards will restrict the short-term convenience parking. So I think that's essential that the bollards are replaced. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I've got a couple of questions. Yeah, the reason I mention the Highways Authority so much here is, and the question that I asked, the last application for a fast food outlet in this area, many years ago, there was quite a detailed Highways Authority feedback. They looked into the type of business and knew how many people were likely to visit. Did you not look into this current business model to see what the anticipated number of visitors would be?
So, if I understand, the application is for a hot food takeaway. It's not particularly for this to sell this type of food. So, in any hot food takeaway, the concern is short-term indiscriminate parking, because people want to park as close as possible to the entrance to get their food. Oh, I'm only going to be in there for a few minutes, so you know I don't need to park in the parking spaces. We've got the bollards there. We've got waiting restrictions all over the place. There's in excess of 20 parking spaces in Foxwell and along the street there. And I think the other shops are generally not going to be busy at the time of this hot food. The only other one is Papa John's, and I think probably there primarily would be a delivery service as well. So we're comfortable that that the application is acceptable. We did look at the accidents as well, and in the local area, well, the adjacent street, there are no accidents over the 5-year period as well, just to make sure we've got some comfort there. There's no existing problems. There was a slight accident on the crossing. We did pick that up, and but I think if we take the view, are we going to refuse the application on highways grounds? What would be the reason, and what reason could we sustain an appeal? So, given the location where it is, we're comfortable to have no objections to the application. Hope that clarifies the situation. Thanks, Chair.
Is it the one facing the community centre? That parade there? No, it's the one up the road by the gardens, yeah. Yeah, I know, yeah. And so the waste and all that, that would be round the back, wouldn't it? Like the waste bins. And would there be a bin outside to take away? Please.
So there is proposed waste collection in the customer area and in the staff area. There would be no external bins, but there are 4 bins located. There's one immediately outside the takeaway, there's one by Harcourt Road, there's one by the bus stop by Royal Oak, and there's one on the entrance to Foxwell Drive. So I was happy that the provisions provided by the applicant internally and the publicly available bins would be sufficient.
And would they be shared bins? They're not the big industrial bins?
Sorry, internally or externally?
Yeah, like food waste and everything there.
So internally, that would be up to the applicant, but I can imagine they would be sufficient for the use. Externally, they are just the small public bins that you see along the high street.
And what about the ventilation with the odour, and the flute? And it's adjacent to the wall. How big is this? It's actually come out of the wall, like, for extracting air?
So majority of it will be hidden behind the parapet wall, so it will be lying flat along the flat roof of the unit. The flue bit will be vertical, so you will be able to see it. It's roughly 6 metres.
It's all caused which way the wind goes, isn't it? And, I didn't think we had a police station in Hope now. I'm happy with that for a moment, please.
So unless I've missed it, I can't see where we invited the police to comment. Is there a comment from the police in the report? If I missed it.
The police were not consulted on the application. It's not standard for them to be consulted on hot food takeaway applications.
No, well, I'm not sure. I still think I'm relatively new to planning, so I wasn't too sure that there was no requirement to. But given that there are representations about antisocial behaviour, it wouldn't have been unreasonable to say to the local police force, "Hey, got any ideas on this? What are your thoughts?" We don't always have to go by the letter of the law. We always have to go by the letter of the law. But sometimes we can say, "Hey, we've got an idea of our own, and on this one, we'll talk to the local cops." Do we never do that for a takeaway? Or a business open at 11 o'clock at night over weekends? Don't we ever do that?
I wouldn't say we'd never do it. In this case, I didn't seem it was necessary. I was happy with the consultees I'd undertaken. I can't speak for every hot food takeaway that the council receives an application. In my experience, I've not consulted police on a hot food takeaway. And in this case, I didn't think it was necessary, and I stand by that decision.
So in my experience as a local councillor, believe you me, when you get takeaways that aren't conforming to what is acceptable behaviour and acceptable noise. Believe you me, as a councillor, I certainly am notified by local residents about what's going on and what's not going right. So from my experience, looking at the planners, from my experience, if it was my ward, I'd certainly recommend that we talk to the local police and get their take on it, get their views. If we think it's a good idea, maybe we need a couple of more conditions. I think I've made my point. I don't want to labour it, but I'm surprised that we don't sometimes act a little bit out of the box and say, let's find out what the local police have got to say about this one.
I've one question. Do the opening hours of this one differ from the opening hours of Papa John, which is the other food outlet in the very near area? And how do they compare also to the Royal Oak, which is literally a couple of, well, maybe less than a minute walk away?
So the proposed opening hours are Monday to Saturday, 5 till 11, and the same for Sunday bank holidays. That does match the opening hours of Papa John's. I believe that the Royal Oak opening hours are also to 11 o'clock at night.
Right, thank you, Chair. I know we're not in debate yet, and this is a question. When the Papa John's, because you mentioned Papa John's, which didn't show up in the photograph very well, it was just a little bit right at the end. When Papa John's came to this committee, it was a few years ago, I know, it was refused by this committee, and the application today it's just about identical. It's close. The reasons that were given was the proximity to dwelling houses. It's right next door. Another reason given was the cumulative impact of the outlet. And really, the cumulative impact now is even greater. So my question is, and I know it went to appeal and that it was granted, but it was refused by this committee. What has changed in planning law since? I know there have been changes, but what has changed in planning law that would mean those reasons no longer apply?
So we do have a C4 policy in the city plan for hot food takeaways, to which this application does abide and meet all the requirements. That would be the most recent change in legislation and local policy. They have taken into consideration impacts such as 2 hot food takeaways can't be adjacent to each other or within 10 metres, of which this does not apply. They have to provide sufficient waste, which I agree this does. So that is the policy change to which this application, I am happy with, abides by.
Okay, and we'll move into debate, I think. Now, have you got a question?
Hello, thank you. What's the legislation on takeaway ducts being away from domestic windows?
I'm not aware that there is any specific legislation in regards to domestic uses, residence windows or flues. The council's external consultee was consulted on the application and they are happy and they raise no objection subject to the conditions I stated previously.
Thank you. I noticed there on 5.2, page 39, there are 7 letters of objection, 1 being noise and waste pollution and 2 being concern of air quality, which would come down to the duct, etc. So personally, I can't see any reason to refuse this as long as the duct air work is done, because the smells and things for residents is my only concern with this. Takeaway, I think, would be great in the area, but my concerns around the duct. So 5.2 raises 2 issues around noise and waste pollution and concerns of air quality. And then if you go to the consultants' points on, the officers' points on 6.53 of page 45, they say that most recent proposed ventilation plan, drawing number C077210 revision C, raised no objection subject to conditions of the council's consultant. Then if you go to 4.4 of page 39, the consultant says the plans now look acceptable. However, the number of carbon filters should be stated and the sound reduction specification of the proposed makeup of the air duct detailed for further comment. Wouldn't it make sense to have those agreements in place with the consultants and then go without the condition, rather than having the conditions in retrospect before construction starts? Because then that way you can establish at that point, if there's going to be no noise issues with the neighbours, if there's going to be no sound noises, as well as ventilation spells and also the smells coming off them. Would it not be worth doing that before and then finding if it's acceptable? Because that surely would be whether you get planning or not, rather than looking after granting planning and then finding that it's not going to be acceptable.
So yes, I've had lengthy discussions with our external consultant. For the latest revisions, he was happy and raised no objection. I am happy that the conditions placed would omit any of these potential issues. I didn't feel that it was necessary to refuse on that basis or prolong this application to obtain them. We had discussions with the consultant and he was happy for it to be conditioned. It's quite a standard procedure for hot food takeaways. I appreciate that it may have given more clarity, however, it was not deemed unnecessary or unreasonable to condition those parts of the ventilation system.
Thank you. So the pre-commencement conditions, that'd be condition 7 and condition 8. Condition 7 being the number of carbon filters and condition 8 being the ventilation system, yeah? What checks would be done after? So just say, for example, I say I'm going to be fitting this ventilation system. It's going to have this number of filters. I've been working with planning all my life in my own personal capacity. No one ever checks the specification of ventilation systems once they've been installed. They just sign off the conditions, you pay the condition fee and it's signed off. Will there be any follow-up checks just to ensure that the correct documentation that's provided by the takeaway owner is installed? Yeah, will that be done?
It's not common practice to go out to site to confirm what has been implemented. They are required to abide by the conditions in place and the discharge condition, as you mentioned. If they did not implement what they proposed and was discharged, then they would be in breach of planning and an enforcement investigation would be enacted on the site.
If you could do a follow-up on that, and if you follow up on that, I'd be happy to support the application. I just want to know that what's been approved by the consultant is actually what's been installed, because there is never any follow-up checks by planning. And obviously that would be the only concern for me, because I think the kebab shop in that location would be good. I think there will be a need for it. I think it's a great commodity to the residents. The only concern I have is around the ventilation, and just ensuring that the ventilation is a correct distance away from domestic windows, and to ensure that the correct product that they state being issued is actually fitted. So that'd be only my only concern, because it never gets followed up. You don't want a cheaper alternative being fitted, if that makes sense. Can you add that to a condition?
Yeah, we can tweak the condition to require the submission of a verification report once it's been done. So there can be details to be submitted in accordance with, and then a verification report to be followed in to confirm that that's been done.
That'd be fantastic. If that's added in this condition, I'd be more than happy to support the application. Thanks.
Is the committee happy with amending that condition? I'm not. I'm just asking if we'd be happy to get the condition amended to tweak slightly. Yeah.
I wasn't quite clear what the condition was. Was the condition that they'll show the people who are going to install it, who are having it installed, what it is, or show our guys? I've lost the plot there.
Do you want? Yes, sorry.
So they would be required to provide information before commencement, to which our consultants would be consulted upon. If they are happy, then we would discharge the condition. Then they would they would be made to provide a verification report as to confirm that what we have discharged and approved has been implemented.
But just to follow through on Councillor Chambers' questions, we don't follow that up with an inspection.
We do not, as a planning department. I can't speak for other environmental health teams in the council. As you can appreciate, if we did that on every application, we would come to a standstill on work. So that's not possible, unfortunately.
So, sorry, just to be clear, current condition at the moment is they just say what's been installed, and the officer for the consultant will pass that to the consultant and say, yeah, I'm happy with the number of filters, I'm happy with the equipment, it's going to be below the decibels, so it's going to make the noise. So just to be clear, that's what's happened. They sign that off, pay the fee, that gets approved, and the conditions get discharged. All I'm asking for is that gets a follow-up, which they can tweak the things just to make sure what they said they're going to install has been installed. That's correct, yeah? So, yeah, I think that's good thing, and I think it's good.
Okay, any more debate or?
Yeah, I know it. No, nobody ever gets checks. I'm quite a great believer in planning. Nobody checks anyone. We don't even get checks sometimes. But where I'm coming from on this, there's many takeaways there. I mean, the Royal Oak in the summer does barbecues outside. You've got the fish and chip shop. You've got the Chinese shop. You've got everything. So it's not fair you penalise these people. I mean, everybody should be checked, really. There's quite a little food outlet up there, like the Wagon and Horses, where there's sizzlers. You can smell that up the road. So there are quite a few takeaways around there, and a kebab shop, whatever it's supposed to be. There's not much smell, I would say, from that. But I know where you're coming from, and I think this will just fit nicely in that parade, and hopefully they'll make it look a lot better there, because it has started to deteriorate down there. And there's a lot of people sometimes might use a community centre, pop over and get fish and chips and take it back in and all that. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
no, I'm happy with it. But I
Okay.
think it's a good point, Alistair.
Thank you, Councillor Tracy. I feel like we need to move on if that's possible.
No,
Just very briefly, please.
Briefly, I just wanted to dig myself out of a little hole I might have got into. I'm not implying any criticism or attacking the integrity of the applicant. Absolutely not. So I think there's a principle here that Councillor Chambers has made, and I think it's one we can follow up outside of this meeting and this committee. How we work, Councillor Tracy latched onto it as well. So I think there is an issue here, but I just want to be very clear. There's no implications, implied or otherwise, on the integrity of the applicant. Far from it.
I know if I...
Okay, let's move on.
Do we have a vote on that? To include that, or is that okay?
I'm gonna hold on, Councillor Tracy. Are we right? I'm going to move to the vote, and I'm going. What I'm going. Oh, Councillor Brown, very.
Do we move to debate?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I really just want to say that I want this centre to be commercially active, and and it's not good that it's been empty for so long. But I am conscious of what the neighbours would have to put up with, because I've seen what's happened with Papa John's. They've generated a lot of complaints from local residents. And just to remind people, the Papa John's application was refused by this committee for the reasons I gave earlier. And it went to appeal and it was granted. But the concerns that were in this decision by the panel, by the committee those years ago, have come true. It's, the odours and the traffic are a concern. So I'm not comfortable with this application at all. And I welcome the additional condition. And I just wonder, one of the things that has worked with Papa John's is keeping the door closed. And I don't think that's in the conditions, and I wonder if that could be added as well. Keeping the door closed, because the fumes, the odours come out the door, and it's not good for local residents. So I would propose that we add that condition.
You can't stipulate.
I appreciate the concern, but that would not be
Can't do
a
that.
reasonable condition
No.
I would find to
It's
put on
not.
this application.
Safeguarding children.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. The difficulty with such a condition is the fact it's going to be unenforceable. To keep a door closed, who's there to enforce it? And also to remind members that you're to consider the application before you today, not a prior application. I do understand what the councillor's saying. However, it is the application before you today. And you've heard from officers that it is policy compliant. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So, if it's okay, I'm going to move the recommendations laid out in the report with an amendment to, which condition was it?
Sorry, conditions 7 and 8. 7's the carbon filters, and 8's the ventilation system. Same thing. The filters form part of the ventilation system.
We'll just,
Can I just, while you're just doing that, can I just quickly add some debate?
no, we're,
Really quickly, just while you're doing that. So I think this is great for the community. I think it's going to be really good. If it's busy, that's only one good thing. It means the community are using an asset and it's being used. The only concern that's been raised is this noise
okay,
smell,
thank you.
which would be covered by the ventilation system. So I'm happy to support.
So the variation of condition would be condition 5 as presented in the late materials. However, you would happy to delegate the variation of condition 6 and 7 back to the officer for the implementation of the verification report.
Okay. So all those in favour with the recommendations as, got a seconder? As with the 2 amendments to the conditions?
It's proposed by the chair, seconded by the deputy. In favour, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
All those against?
3 against. Any abstention?
No, it's everybody.
7, 3, 2.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on, but it's you again. So if anybody wants to leave, they may, as we've got Ken's, we'll take a rest break. 55 Derby Road now.
So this application is for 55 Derby Road. This application is for a lawful development certificate to assess whether the change of use from a residential dwelling C3 to small HMO C4, which would be 6 bedrooms, is lawful. It is located within the Barton and Treadworth ward and has been brought for committee as it was called up by a ward councillor. This is the site location plan, as shown with the red line boundary. Barton Street is to the south and the railway crossing onto Horton Road is to the north, to give you some context. And directly opposite the site is Sydney Street and the Ukrainian Catholic Church. Just to give you some context, these are some existing site photos. This is the existing elevation of the property. As you can see from the elevation plans, there is a rear extension. This was granted planning permission in 2014. This is the existing floor plan. This is the Happy for me to move on? These are the proposed elevations for the site. There are no external alterations proposed. This is the proposed floor plan, which demonstrates the 6 bedrooms. This is a proposed block plan. There is no change to the layout of the property. They have demonstrated that they will be including bin and cycle storage. However, this is not a requirement for the lawful development certificate, but is a welcome addition to the property. To give you some context for the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development, England Order of 2015, Class L applies to small HMOs to dwelling houses and vice versa, which this application is in relation to. As you can see, I've highlighted the sections to try and make it clear. Development consisting of change of use from a use falling within Class C, sorry, apologies, I've highlighted the wrong one. Use class falling within C3, dwelling house to the schedule of use class orders to use class C4, in this case, which abides. And it's not 2 or more separate dwelling houses falling within class C3, converting to a use class C4. Therefore, it is the officer's recommendation to grant the lawful development certificate. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully that's clear. You have a question? Do you? Yeah, quick question.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. I mean, I can't understand why it's come to planning if it's permitted development. Is it because the ward councillor requested it?
So the short answer is yes. The constitutional changes that went through council the last week would mean that this sort of quirk wouldn't happen in the future. But it had already been asked to come to committee, so the legal advice was it had to follow the constitution at the time. So unfortunately, we've got it, but as far as I can see, it ticks the boxes of the lawful development certificate and therefore is legal. We'll just have to approve it.
Just a question on that point. Why does it say the ward councillor for Barton and Treadworth objected to the proposed application? Why there are 3 of them from memory, aren't there? For Barton and Treadworth. Why don't we say who it is? How do you know who it is? And if it was my ward, I'd want to see my name in the record to prove that I've made those representations.
It's pretty standard to refer to them as the ward councillor. We, as far as I'm aware, development manager might be able to. No, we don't. Yeah.
Why can't we just say who it is?
The ward councillor in this case is Councillor Littu.
Okay, I'm going to move to approve. Do I have a seconder? All those in favour of accepting the recommendations laid out in the report?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10.
Okay, so that's everyone. It's unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on. As item 8 doesn't exist, so it's not on the agenda anymore. Move on to delegated decisions. Happy to note. Okay, and we'll see you at the next meeting on Tuesday, the 5th of March. And that's our last planning committee as who we are today before the elections. Okay, I'll see you. See you all next month. Just to let the committee know that this is